They mocked her ragged dress. Then a cowboy said, "She's the finest woman here." The road behind her stretched for miles, a long trail of brown earth where the sun had baked deep cracks into the surface. She had been walking since dawn, her small bundle of belongings tied tightly in a cloth that had once been white, now gray and frayed at the edges. Her feet were sore and blistered, and every step sent a small ache up her legs, but she did not complain. Clara had learned early that complaining changed nothing, and today, more than ever, she had to keep moving forward. The small town she had come to was just beginning to wake. Smoke rose lazily from chimneys, and the scent of fresh bread drifted from a tiny bakery on the corner. Children ran along the uneven streets, kicking up little clouds of dust, while their mothers called after them in sing-song voices. Clara took a deep breath. The town was quieter than the villages she had known back home, but it had a certain charm. Shops lined the streets, painted in fading colors, and the wooden signs creaked in the gentle morning breeze. She clutched her bundle closer to her chest and began walking. She felt every eye on her the moment she entered the town square. It wasn't just that her dress was old or patched in places where the fabric had worn through. It was more than that. She carried herself differently. Clara was tall for her age, with shoulders held back and a head lifted high, even when the wind caught her hair in messy tangles. Yet, despite her posture, the townspeople could not hide their surprise. Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. "Look at her dress," one woman whispered to another, her voice just loud enough for Clara to hear. "She must be new here," the other replied, smirking. "Not a stitch of proper lace or ribbons." Clara kept walking, pretending not to hear. She had long since learned that pretending to ignore cruelty was often the safest way to survive. Still, her stomach tightened with nerves. She knew that people judged quickly in this town, as in every town she had ever visited. Here, appearance seemed to matter more than kindness or intelligence. She had come a long way, hoping to find honest work, but now she wondered if the smallness of her purse and the roughness of her clothes would bar her from every opportunity. A bell rang somewhere nearby, announcing the opening of the day's market. Clara paused at the edge of the square, scanning the wooden stalls filled with fruits, vegetables, and hand-stitched garments. The colors were bright and cheerful, a stark contrast to her muted dress. She imagined the townspeople buying what they wanted while she stood on the sidelines, invisible. Still, she had to try. One could not survive by staying invisible forever. She approached a fruit stall where a woman was arranging apples in neat rows. "Good morning, ma'am," Clara said, her voice quiet but steady. "Do you have any work for me? I can sweep, clean, or carry things for you." The woman looked her up and down, her eyes lingering on the patches of Clara's dress. There was a flicker of something, pity maybe or suspicion, before she smiled politely. "We're rather busy, dear," she said. "Perhaps later, you might try the blacksmith or the inn." Clara nodded and thanked her, moving on. She had expected rejection. It stung less when it was not a surprise. She crossed the square toward the blacksmith's shop, the sound of hammers ringing through the air as a man shaped glowing metal into horseshoes. She tried to catch his attention. "Excuse me, sir," Clara called. "Do you need help with anything today? I am quick with my hands and willing to work hard." The blacksmith wiped sweat from his brow and squinted at her. "You work here," he laughed, a loud, booming sound that drew curious looks from nearby townspeople. "With that dress." Clara felt her cheeks burn, but she held her ground. "I can clean it first if you like," she said with a faint smile, though her heart pounded. The blacksmith shook his head and returned to his work. "Not today, little miss. Try the inn or the stables. They might need someone who's not afraid to get dirty." She thanked him again, her pride pinched but not broken. Clara had traveled too far and endured too much to let a few dismissive laughs turn her back now. She made her way to the inn, its wooden sign swinging slightly in the morning breeze. Inside, the smell of fresh bread mingled with the earthy scent of hay that had been brought in for the horses. Clara stepped cautiously, mindful of the polished wooden floors and the neatly dressed staff moving with purpose. "Good morning," she said to the innkeeper, a stout man with a kind but tired face. "I was wondering if there is any work for me here. I can clean, cook, or help with the horses." The innkeeper looked her over. Unlike the others, he did not laugh or whisper. "Perhaps," he said slowly. "It depends on what kind of work you can do. We could use help in the kitchen. Come back this afternoon and I will see what I can arrange." Clara's shoulders relaxed slightly. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. She had found at least one person willing to give her a chance. She left the inn, her spirits lifted but still cautious. Outside, the town had grown busier. More people were arriving for the fair that was to be held that evening. Stalls were being set up in preparation, and laughter rang through the square as children chased each other with sticks and ribbons. Clara watched, feeling both out of place and strangely fascinated. Her attention was drawn to a group of women gathered near a fountain in the center of the square. They were dressed in the latest fashions, their skirts crisp and their jewelry glinting in the sunlight. As Clara passed, she heard their laughter, sharp and unkind. "Look at her dress," one said. "Doesn't she know this is a proper fair? She's probably never been to a place like this before," another added, smirking. Clara's hands clenched around her bundle. She wanted to shrink away, to disappear into the shadows where no one could see her. Yet something inside her refused to let her run. She lifted her chin and walked past them, pretending she had not heard. Still, the words echoed in her mind. She found a quiet corner near the fountain and sat down for a moment, letting the noise of the town wash over her. Clara thought about her journey, the long walks along dusty roads, the nights sleeping under the stars, and the constant uncertainty of finding work in safety. Each challenge had left her weary, but she had survived. And perhaps, she thought, this town would be different. Perhaps there was someone here who would see her for who she really was, not just the dress she wore. Clara did not have to wait long. A tall figure appeared at the edge of the square, moving with the easy confidence of someone who belonged here. His hat was tipped slightly back, revealing a friendly face weathered by sun and wind. He carried a saddle over one shoulder and had the quiet strength of someone who respected hard work. Clara noticed him immediately because he looked at her, not with pity or judgment, but with a kind of recognition that she could not explain. For a moment she allowed herself to hope. Perhaps this town was not like the others. Perhaps, amid the whispers and judgment, there was still kindness to be found. Clara stood up, brushing the dust from her skirt, and walked toward the inn to return in the afternoon as promised. As she did, she vowed silently to herself that she would not let anyone's words define her. No matter how ragged her dress, no matter how sharp the whispers, Clara knew she had her own worth. And perhaps in this town, that would be enough. The afternoon sun had climbed higher, painting the town in warm golden light. Clara adjusted the bundle on her shoulder as she walked back toward the inn. She could hear the laughter and chatter of people preparing for the evening's fair, and she felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. The whispers from earlier still lingered in her mind, but she pushed them aside. Today, she would show that she was capable, that she belonged just as much as anyone else. When Clara stepped into the inn, the smell of fresh bread and stew greeted her. The innkeeper, Mr. Thompson, was busy wiping tables but looked up when he saw her. "Ah, you're back," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Good. I think we can find something for you to do." Clara nodded politely. "Thank you, sir. I am ready to work." He motioned her toward the kitchen. "Start by helping Martha with the dishes and cleaning. Then, if there is time, you can help sweep the floors and tidy the rooms upstairs." Clara rolled up her sleeves and began. The kitchen was warm, filled with the aroma of roasting meat and fresh bread. Martha, the cook, was a stout woman with a kind face and quick hands. "You've got spirit, girl," she said, handing Clara a cloth. "Let's see how fast you can wash these dishes." Clara worked quickly, her hands moving efficiently through soapy water. She did not complain when her fingers turned red from the heat or when a plate slipped and she had to scrub it again. Martha watched her carefully, occasionally nodding in approval. For the first time that day, Clara felt a sense of accomplishment. She was not just a poor girl in a ragged dress. She was someone who could work, contribute, and make a difference. By mid-afternoon, Clara had cleaned the kitchen, swept the floors, and even helped tidy the guest rooms upstairs. Mr. Thompson came by to check her progress. "You've done well," he said. "I think we can find more for you tomorrow. For now, take a short break. You've earned it." Clara stepped outside, letting the cool breeze wash over her. She leaned against the wooden railing and watched the townspeople preparing for the fair. Stalls were being arranged, ribbons hung from poles and colorful banners flapped gently in the wind. Children ran around with painted faces, laughing and calling to one another. Clara felt a pang of longing. She had never been to a fair before. In her village, celebrations were rare, and there was little time for games or laughter. As she stood there, she noticed a group of young women gathering near the fountain. They were dressed in fine clothing, their skirts crisp and shiny, their jewelry catching the sunlight. Clara felt a familiar tightening in her chest. The same whispers and giggles from that morning floated to her ears. "Look at her again," one said. "She still hasn't learned. That dress is a joke." "She's hopeless," another added, smirking. Clara's hands clenched at her sides. She wanted to run to escape the judgment and humiliation, but something inside her refused. She had come too far and endured too much to let their words define her. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and walked past them, her steps slow but steady. "Don't let them get to you," a voice called softly. Clara turned to see the cowboy from earlier, the one who had looked at her with kindness that morning. He leaned against a post, tipping his hat slightly. His presence was calm and reassuring, and she felt a small spark of hope. "Thank you," she said quietly, though she was unsure if he heard. The man nodded and walked on, disappearing into the crowd. Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. Someone had noticed her, seen her for more than the patches on her dress or the dust on her shoes. For the first time that day, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps kindness existed even in a town that seemed so harsh. Clara returned to her work at the inn, but her mind kept drifting to the fair. She wondered what it would be like to join in, even for a little while, to laugh and enjoy herself without fear of judgment. She imagined the colorful stalls, the games, and the music. She imagined people looking at her not with mockery, but with respect or at least neutrality. By late afternoon, the inn was quieter. Guests had gone to prepare for the fair, and Clara was finishing her last tasks. She paused to wipe her brow and looked around the tidy kitchen. She felt proud of what she had accomplished. It was not much, perhaps, but it was a start. She had survived her first day, and she had survived it with her dignity intact. Stepping outside again, Clara noticed that the square had transformed. The fair was in full preparation. Wooden stalls were lined up in neat rows, each one bursting with colorful items. Handcrafted toys, fresh fruits, and small trinkets gleamed in the late afternoon sun. The townspeople bustled about, laughing and chatting, the earlier tension of the day replaced with excitement. Clara hesitated at the edge of the square. She wanted to explore, to see the fair with her own eyes, but she also felt the weight of judgment pressing on her shoulders. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that she had the right to be here just as much as anyone else. With cautious steps, she moved forward. As she walked, she caught snippets of conversations. People admired the craftsmanship of the stalls, the freshness of the food, and the bright colors of the ribbons. Children squealed with delight at the sight of toys and games. Clara felt a small smile tug at her lips. For a moment, she forgot about the whispers and the mockery. She allowed herself to simply observe, to enjoy the simple joys that this fair brought. Then she felt it again, the stare. A group of women, the same ones from earlier, had spotted her. Their eyes narrowed and their lips curved into sly smiles. Clara felt the familiar tightening in her chest. "She thinks she belongs here," one whispered. "Doesn't she know she looks ridiculous?" another added. Clara's first instinct was to shrink back, to escape into the shadows. But she remembered the cowboy's gaze earlier, the way he had looked at her with respect rather than judgment. She squared her shoulders and walked past them, her steps deliberate. The women's whispers followed her, but Clara kept moving. She stopped at a small stall selling handmade ribbons and buttons. She picked up a spool of bright blue ribbon and ran her fingers over it. The colors were vibrant and cheerful, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine making her dress a little brighter, a little more like the others. "Careful, miss," a voice said gently. Clara looked up to see the cowboy standing nearby. He smiled warmly, tipping his hat. "Don't let anyone make you feel small," he said. "Your worth isn't in your dress or your shoes, it's in who you are." Clara's chest tightened and she felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and moved on, leaving her with a sense of courage she had not felt before. She stayed at the stall for a while longer, admiring the ribbons and imagining small ways to brighten her dress. It was a small act, but it felt like a victory. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the square, the fair began to fill with music. Fiddles played lively tunes and the sound of laughter echoed through the streets. Clara watched, her heart lifting with each note. She felt a longing to join in, to dance and laugh as the townspeople did. But she also knew that doing so would require courage she was still building. Instead, she found a quiet spot near the fountain and watched the fair unfold. She saw children running and playing, couples walking hand in hand, and neighbors greeting one another warmly. For the first time in a long while, Clara felt a sense of belonging, not fully, but enough to make her believe it could come one day. Hours passed and the evening air grew cooler. Clara realized that her first day in the town was drawing to a close. She had survived the whispers, the judgment, and the uncertainty. She had worked hard, shown her skills, and discovered that not everyone was cruel. She had found small moments of kindness, like the cowboy's words and the innkeeper's trust. As she walked back to the inn to rest, Clara felt a new sense of determination. Tomorrow, she would continue her work. She would continue to prove herself. And perhaps, just perhaps, she would find a way to enjoy the fair, to join in the laughter and music, and to show the town that she was more than her dress, more than the dust on her shoes, more than anyone's judgment. For now, Clara allowed herself a small, quiet smile. She had faced the first challenges of the town and had not broken. She had survived, and she had learned something important, that courage and kindness could shine brighter than fear and mockery. And in that thought, she found the strength to keep moving forward. The evening settled gently over the small town, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that melted into soft purples. Clara walked slowly through the town square, her steps careful but steady. The fair was now in full swing, with music, laughter, and the chatter of townspeople filling the air. Stalls overflowed with colorful fabrics, handcrafted toys, and sweet-smelling treats. Fiddles and drums played lively tunes, and children ran through the crowd, their joyful cries echoing against the wooden buildings. Clara felt both awe and nervousness. She had never seen anything like this before. Her eyes wandered over the people around her, noting the way the townsfolk dressed in fine clothing, with polished shoes and bright ribbons. In contrast, her own dress looked even more worn and patched under the glow of the evening sun. She felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the whispers and judgment from earlier creeping back into her thoughts. Then she noticed him. The cowboy from earlier stood a short distance away, leaning casually against a wooden post near the largest stall in the square. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a worn hat tipped slightly forward, shading his face. Yet his eyes were bright and kind, scanning the crowd as if he were expecting someone, or maybe watching for trouble. Clara felt a small spark of courage just from seeing him. Somehow, his presence made the world feel less intimidating, as though she had an ally in a place that had seemed so harsh. Taking a deep breath, Clara walked toward the stall selling fresh fruit and baked goods. She wanted to taste the excitement, to feel part of the fair rather than standing on the sidelines. But the group of women from earlier spotted her immediately. Their eyes narrowed, and they began to whisper and laugh, their voices carrying across the square. "Look at her trying to fit in now," one said, tilting her head in mockery. "She doesn't belong here," another added, smirking. Clara's stomach twisted. She wanted to run, to hide from their judgment, but she remembered the cowboy's calm gaze from before. He had looked at her with respect and not with ridicule. Clara squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and kept walking. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she refused to let fear control her. As she reached the fruit stall, she tried to ignore the whispers and focus on the colorful displays before her. She picked up a bright red apple and felt its smooth skin in her hand. The smell of fresh bread from a nearby stall made her stomach growl. She wanted to stay here to explore, but she also sensed the group of women watching her, ready to snicker at any misstep. That was when the cowboy stepped forward. He moved with a quiet confidence, approaching Clara in a way that made it clear he would not let anyone harm her, physically or emotionally. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke to the women. "She's the finest woman here," he said. The words were simple, yet they carried weight. Clara froze, staring at him in disbelief. She could hear the women's whispers faltering, their laughter dying on their lips. They exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond to his declaration. "Excuse me," one of the women asked, raising an eyebrow. The cowboy did not raise his voice or argue. He simply looked at Clara with a smile that was both reassuring and sincere. "I said she's the finest woman here," he repeated. "Not because of her dress or her shoes or what she looks like, because of her heart, because of the courage it takes to stand here while others judge her. That's what makes her remarkable." A hush fell over the nearby crowd. People stopped to watch, curious about the sudden confrontation. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks, not from embarrassment this time, but from a mix of relief and pride. She had never been spoken about in such a way before. Never had someone see her for who she truly was rather than the appearance she carried. The women looked at her, their expressions shifting from mockery to confusion. They could not deny the cowboy's words, and they felt the weight of the truth in them. Clara, still holding the apple, felt a small smile creep onto her lips. She wanted to thank the cowboy, but her voice felt stuck in her throat. Instead, she nodded slightly, and he gave her a small, understanding smile in return. For the first time that day, Clara felt as if she belonged. She walked with a lighter step, exploring the fair with a newfound courage. She visited stalls filled with ribbons, buttons, and small trinkets. She marveled at the handcrafted toys, watching children laugh as they played simple games. She even tasted fresh bread and apples from the vendors, savoring the flavors with delight. The fair seemed to welcome her in a way it had not before. People who had not noticed her earlier now nodded politely, some offering small smiles. She even noticed a few of the women from before glancing at her with something like respect, though their pride would not allow them to admit it openly. Clara wandered toward a small open area where music was playing. A group of musicians had gathered, fiddles and drums creating a lively rhythm. Children ran past, playing simple games that made her smile. She wanted to join, but hesitation held her back. Yet as she watched, she noticed the cowboy again, standing at the edge of the crowd, observing her with a calm and steady presence. His gaze gave her courage. Slowly, she stepped closer to the musicians, letting the rhythm of the music guide her movements. She could feel the tension in her shoulders easing. Her steps became lighter, more natural, and soon she was swaying gently to the music, allowing herself to be part of the celebration. She felt eyes on her, some admiring, some curious, but the sting of judgment from before had diminished. The cowboy watched silently, his presence like a shield around her. Clara felt a sense of safety she had not experienced before in this town. It was as if someone finally believed in her, even when the world around her had been quick to judge. As the evening wore on, the fair became busier. More townspeople arrived, drawn by the music and the lively atmosphere. Clara explored further, visiting stalls selling homemade crafts and small toys. She even helped a little girl pick out a ribbon for her hair, offering gentle advice on colors that would match. The girl smiled at her warmly, and Clara felt a sense of connection that warmed her heart. In that moment, Clara realized something important. The fair, the townspeople, the judgments and whispers, all of it mattered less than the courage to keep moving forward. She understood that true respect came not from others' approval, but from holding on to one's own sense of worth and dignity. And tonight, with the cowboy's words echoing in her mind, she felt that worth more clearly than ever before. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, the fair continued under the soft glow of lanterns. Clara walked slowly through the square, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known. The whispers of mockery had been replaced by a quiet admiration from those who had been watching. She had faced fear, judgment, and doubt, and she had emerged stronger for it. The cowboy approached her again as the crowd began to thin. "You did well tonight," he said simply. "Most would have run away, most would have let them laugh, but you stayed. That shows courage, and courage is rare." Clara felt her heart swell with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice steady this time. I didn't know what to do at first, but you helped me see that it was possible." He nodded, tipping his hat. "Sometimes all it takes is one person to remind you of your own worth. Remember that and you can face anything." Clara nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she truly believed that she could stand tall, even in a world quick to judge. She had found an ally, a friend, and perhaps something more, a guiding presence that gave her the courage to keep moving forward. That night, as she returned to the inn, Clara felt a sense of peace. She had faced the challenge of the fair, confronted the judgment of others, and discovered a strength within herself she had not known existed. She realized that appearances mattered little compared to character, courage, and kindness. And with the cowboy's words lingering in her mind, she knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready to face them with confidence and dignity. Clara lay in her small room at the inn, listening to the distant laughter and music from the fair. She reflected on the events of the day, the work at the inn, the whispers, the courage it had taken to face them, and the unexpected kindness she had received. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope that this town might be a place where she could belong, where she could be respected for who she was rather than judged for what she wore. As sleep finally claimed her, Clara dreamed of a future where courage and kindness guided her path, where she could navigate the challenges of life with dignity, and where even a ragged dress could not hide the strength and beauty within. The next morning, Clara woke early, the sun spilling soft light across her small room in the inn. She stretched, feeling the pleasant ache of tired muscles from her work and the excitement of the previous evening. The fair had ended hours ago, leaving the town quiet and peaceful once more. Clara's heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. She remembered the cowboy's words from the night before, "Courage is rare, and you have it." They echoed in her mind, filling her with a sense of confidence she had not known before. As she prepared for the day, Clara thought about the work that awaited her at the inn. She had cleaned, swept, and tidied her way into the innkeeper's favor, and now she felt ready to take on more responsibility. She dressed as best as she could, smoothing out the worn fabric of her dress and brushing the dust from her shoes. Though the dress was still patched and faded, it felt different to her now, as if her determination and self-respect could somehow make it shine. Downstairs, the inn was already bustling. Mr. Thompson, the innkeeper, greeted her with a nod. "Good morning, Clara. I see you're ready for today. We have a few deliveries to prepare and rooms to tidy before the guests arrive. I trust you're up for it," Clara smiled. "Yes, sir. I'll do my best." She spent the morning carrying baskets of fresh bread, polishing tables, and arranging fresh linens in the guest rooms. The work was hard, but Clara found satisfaction in it. She no longer felt like a stranger in this town, but as someone contributing, someone useful. And for the first time, she realized that competence could earn respect as much as appearance. As the morning passed, she caught sight of the group of women who had mocked her at the fair. They were walking through the street, chatting amongst themselves. When they noticed Clara, their smiles faltered slightly. She had expected scorn, but instead they gave her a polite nod. It was small, almost invisible, but to Clara it felt like recognition. They were seeing her for more than her dress now. They were seeing her as someone capable, someone who belonged. Clara finished her morning chores and took a short break. She stepped outside to find the town alive with the usual midday bustle. Merchants calling out their goods, children chasing each other through the streets, and the smell of fresh bread and roasted meat filling the air. She walked toward the town square, curious to see if the fair's atmosphere had left any lingering excitement. The square looked calm now, with only a few stalls still displaying goods for sale. Clara noticed familiar faces, townspeople who had watched her the previous day, now smiling as they passed. The contrast was striking. Yesterday they had whispered and judged. Today they seemed more accepting, more willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. Clara felt a swell of pride. She had survived judgment and mockery, and now, slowly, respect was beginning to follow. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. She turned to see the cowboy walking toward her, a small bundle of supplies slung over his shoulder. "Good morning, Clara," he said, tipping his hat. "I thought I'd check in. How's your first full day of work going?" Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. "It's going well, sir," she replied. "I feel more confident today. I think people are beginning to see me differently." He smiled. "That's good to hear. You've earned it. Courage and hard work are noticed, even if some people are slow to admit it." Clara nodded, feeling gratitude. "I wouldn't have known I could face yesterday without someone believing in me." The cowboy gave a small nod, as if confirming that belief was important. Sometimes all it takes is one person to remind you of your worth. Never forget that. They walked together through the town, and Clara noticed how differently she perceived the world now. She saw small acts of kindness. A child helping an elderly neighbor carry a basket, a merchant giving a free sample to someone in need, and townspeople smiling at one another as they went about their business. The town seemed friendlier than it had the day before, though Clara knew it wasn't only the town, it was also her own perception changing. By mid-morning, Mr. Thompson asked Clara to help prepare a special order of goods for a visiting family. Clara moved quickly and efficiently, organizing supplies and loading baskets with care. She felt proud as she worked, knowing her efforts would make the guests' visit smooth and pleasant. Even the innkeeper noticed. "You've done well, Clara. Your attention to detail is impressive." Her chest swelled with pride. Clara realized she was no longer just a girl with a patched dress. She was someone the town could rely on. Her confidence grew with every task she completed. After finishing her work, she stepped outside again to catch a breath of fresh air. The sun was high, warming her face, and the streets buzzed with life. She wandered toward the market stalls, curious to see if any new goods had arrived. She smiled as she passed familiar vendors who greeted her politely. The small nods and smiles felt like quiet affirmations of her place in the town. Suddenly, Clara noticed a group of children gathered near a small wooden cart. One little boy had dropped a basket of apples and the fruit rolled across the street. Clara rushed over to help. She picked up the apples, handing them back to the boy with a gentle smile. "Here you go," she said softly. "Be careful next time." The boy's mother approached, looking surprised. "Thank you, young lady, that was very kind of you," Clara smiled politely. "It was no trouble at all." She felt a small thrill of satisfaction. Helping others, even in small ways, made her feel more connected to the town. She realized that kindness and competence could speak louder than appearance, and she was learning to navigate a world that had seemed unwelcoming at first. Later in the afternoon, the inn received a few new guests, and Clara was asked to assist in showing them to their rooms. She guided them carefully, offering friendly conversation and answering questions about the town. The guests were polite and appreciative, and Clara felt a quiet pride in her ability to handle responsibility. She had become someone people could trust. The cowboy appeared again, walking past the inn with a small smile. Clara caught his eye, and he nodded in encouragement. She felt a warm sense of reassurance. He had not only helped her the previous day, but he continued to be a quiet source of strength. His support reminded her that even in a town that had judged her harshly, she could find allies who valued her for who she was. As evening approached, Clara finished her final tasks at the inn. She looked around at the tidy floors, polished tables, and neatly arranged guest rooms. Her heart swelled with pride. Today had been a test of her courage, her skill, and her determination, and she had passed. The town had begun to recognize her worth, and she had begun to recognize it herself. She stepped outside once more, taking a slow walk through the streets. The setting sun painted the buildings in warm shades, and the air was filled with the scents of baked bread, roasted meat, and fresh flowers from the market stalls. Clara noticed the group of women from the fair again. This time, they approached her cautiously. "Good work yesterday," one said, her tone hesitant. Clara looked at them calmly, a small smile on her face. "Thank you," she replied. Their eyes met hers for a moment, and though there was still a hint of pride in their expressions, Clara saw a flicker of respect. It was quiet, subtle, but it mattered more than their earlier mockery. She nodded and continued on her way, realizing that her courage and hard work had begun to change perceptions. As she walked back toward the inn, Clara reflected on the lessons of the day. She had learned that facing fear and judgment was difficult, but it was necessary for growth. She had learned that kindness, competence, and courage could earn respect even when appearances seemed to matter most. And she had learned that allies could appear in unexpected places, offering quiet strength when it was needed most. That night, as Clara prepared for bed, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. She had faced challenges, helped others, and begun to earn her place in the town. The whispers and judgment that had once weighed heavily on her seemed smaller now, replaced by a quiet confidence and hope for the future. She lay down, listening to the gentle sounds of the town at night, the creaking of wooden shutters, the distant bark of a dog, the faint murmur of voices from the inn. Clara knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she felt ready. She had learned that courage, kindness, and perseverance could carry her through anything. And with the support of those who recognized her worth, she felt stronger than ever. For the first time in a long while, Clara allowed herself to dream, not of a perfect life, but of a life where she could face obstacles with dignity, where she could be recognized for her heart and her actions, and where her ragged dress could never hide the strength and beauty. Within her, the morning sun rose gently over the small town, painting the streets in soft gold. Clara woke with a feeling she had never experienced before, a quiet sense of anticipation mixed with calm confidence. Her room at the inn, though small and simple, felt warm and comforting. She dressed carefully, smoothing the folds of her patched dress and tying her hair back neatly. Though her clothes were still worn, Clara no longer felt self-conscious. She had learned something far more important than outward appearances. True worth comes from courage, kindness, and perseverance. Downstairs, the inn was already bustling with activity. Guests were finishing their breakfast, Merchants were unloading supplies and Mr. Thompson, the innkeeper, was moving about with a busy but satisfied expression. Clara greeted him politely. "Good morning, sir. What would you like me to do first today?" "Good morning, Clara," he replied, smiling. "I have a few tasks for you. Help Martha in the kitchen, then check the rooms for guests. You've done well these past days, and I trust you can handle this." Clara nodded, feeling a surge of pride. She moved through her tasks with ease, washing dishes, organizing supplies, and tidying the rooms. Each task reminded her of the progress she had made. She was no longer the timid girl who had arrived in the town with only a ragged dress. She was someone who had proven herself through hard work, courage, and patience. By late morning, the town square was alive with activity once more. Merchants called out their wares, children played tag along the streets, and townspeople greeted each other warmly. Clara stepped outside for a short break, walking slowly through the familiar streets. She noticed faces that had once regarded her with judgment now greeting her with polite nods or small smiles. Even the group of women who had mocked her at the fair seemed more reserved, their previous scorn replaced by curiosity and perhaps respect. Clara's thoughts drifted to the cowboy who had stood up for her at the fair. His words had stayed with her, giving her courage when she needed it most. "She's the finest woman here." Not because of her dress, but because of her heart. She had repeated those words to herself countless times over the past days, letting them strengthen her resolve. As she wandered near the town square, she noticed a commotion by the fountain. A small boy had dropped his basket of apples, sending the fruit rolling in every direction. People hurried to help, but Clara stepped forward instinctively. She gathered the apples quickly, handing them back to the boy with a gentle smile. "Thank you," the boy's mother said, her eyes warm. "That was very kind of you," Clara smiled modestly. "It was nothing," she replied, but inside she felt the quiet joy that came from helping others. Acts of kindness, she realized, were a reflection of her true character, not her clothes or social standing. Later in the day, the inn received new guests, a family visiting from a nearby village. Clara was asked to help guide them to their rooms. She moved confidently, showing them around with ease and answering their questions about the town. They listened politely, clearly impressed by her knowledge and composure. Clara felt a sense of accomplishment. She had earned their trust and in doing so had further cemented her place in the community. By mid-afternoon, she returned to the town square, curious to see how the merchants were doing. The sun was high, casting warm light across the colorful stalls. Children played nearby, their laughter ringing through the air, and Clara felt a deep sense of belonging. She realized that courage and perseverance had not only earned her respect, but had also opened doors she had never imagined. The cowboy appeared again, walking toward her with a friendly nod. "Good afternoon, Clara," he said. "I see you're fitting in nicely." Clara's face lit up with a smile. "Yes, sir, I feel different now. I feel like I belong here." He tipped his hat slightly, his expression approving. "That's good. You've worked hard and faced challenges that would have made others turn away. It's important to remember that respect is earned through character, not appearance." Clara nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. She had learned that lesson well. The fear and self-doubt that had followed her from the moment she arrived in the town were now replaced with confidence and determination. As evening approached, the streets began to fill with townspeople preparing for a smaller celebration in honor of the town's harvest. Music filled the air, and laughter echoed through the square. Clara walked among the crowd, noticing familiar faces and enjoying the lively atmosphere. She felt a quiet pride in herself. The girl who had arrived with nothing but a ragged dress had faced mockery, fear, and uncertainty, and she had emerged stronger, respected, and capable. Near the fountain, she noticed the same group of women from the fair, now observing her with cautious curiosity. One of them stepped forward, her voice hesitant. "Clara, we wanted to say that we admire your courage. You handled yourself well at the fair." Clara looked at her calmly, a small smile forming. "Thank you," she said simply. "It means a lot to hear that." The women nodded, seemingly unsure how to continue, and Clara moved on, feeling a sense of quiet victory. She realized that courage and kindness could influence even those who had once judged her harshly. The whispers and ridicule no longer held power over her. Her actions and character had spoken louder. As the evening sky turned shades of orange and pink, Clara walked toward a quiet corner of the town square. She watched children playing games, couples laughing together, and merchants packing up their stalls. The town, once intimidating and judgmental, now felt welcoming and alive. She felt a deep connection to this place, as if it had accepted her not for what she wore but for who she was. The cowboy approached once more, his presence calm and reassuring. "You've done well, Clara," he said. "Most people would have let yesterday's events shake them, but you've grown stronger and the town has begun to recognize your worth." Clara smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude and humility. "I couldn't have done it without your words. They gave me courage when I needed it most." He nodded, tipping his hat in a quiet gesture of respect. "Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you. Never forget that. And remember, courage and kindness are contagious. By showing them, you inspire others to do the same." Clara reflected on his words as she walked back to the inn. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the long walks, the uncertain nights, the fear and doubt, and the small victories that had gradually built her confidence. She realized that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the determination to face it, to continue moving forward despite it. Back at the inn, she prepared for bed, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced challenges, helped others, and begun to earn her place in the town. She had learned that respect and recognition were not given freely. They were earned through character, perseverance, and kindness. The town, once a place of judgment and whispers, had begun to accept her, and she had begun to accept herself. As Clara lay down, listening to the gentle sounds of the town at night, the creak of wooden shutters, the soft murmur of voices, and the distant bark of a dog, she felt a sense of peace. She had grown in ways she had never imagined, discovering inner strength and resilience. The cowboy's words echoed in her mind once more, a reminder that courage and kindness were more powerful than fear or judgment. Clara closed her eyes, dreaming of a future filled with hope and possibility. She imagined herself walking confidently through the town, helping others and continuing to grow stronger every day. She pictured the townspeople smiling and nodding in acknowledgement, not because of her clothes, but because of the person she had become. In her dreams, she saw herself working at the inn, assisting with the fair, and exploring the town with curiosity and confidence. She imagined moments of laughter, friendship, and kindness, knowing that these were the things that truly mattered. Her ragged dress, once a source of shame, had become a symbol of her journey, the path she had walked, the challenges she had faced, and the courage she had discovered within herself. When morning came again, Clara awoke with the same quiet determination that had guided her through the past days. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she was ready. She had learned that courage, kindness, and perseverance were more important than appearances or judgment. She had discovered her own worth, and with that knowledge, she could face anything. Clara rose from her bed, ready to greet the day. She stepped outside, the town bathed in soft morning light, and took a deep breath. She felt strong, confident, and full of hope. The girl who had arrived in a ragged dress was no longer the same person. She had grown, learned, and discovered her inner strength. She had earned respect, formed connections, and found a place in the town that welcomed her for who she truly was. And with that thought, Clara began her day, ready to face new challenges, embrace new opportunities, and continue her journey with courage and kindness guiding her every step of the way.